The other day was Michigan's primary, and on the Republican side, Donald Trump won. Whoop-de-doo, no one totally saw that coming. But the Democratic election was a little bit more interesting. Biden still won with 81% of the votes and got 623,000 votes. But in second place was not an actual candidate, it was rather uncommitted, which got over 101,000 votes with 13% of the votes. Marianne Williamson, who wasn't even in the race anymore when the primary took place, got 22,000 votes, and then there's Dean Phillips, who is still in the race, who got 20,000 votes. Which, as an aside, yikes, how fucking embarrassing is it to get less votes than a candidate who already dropped out before this primary took place? Anyway, the campaign to vote uncommitted was organized by the group Listen to Michigan, and their aim was to get at least 10,000 people to vote uncommitted to send the message that people do not approve of Biden's handling of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Well, as you can see from the primary results, expectations were far exceeded. But the message is clear. People do not approve of Biden's handling of the genocide in Gaza. Will the Biden administration listen? Honestly, I doubt it. This isn't just an issue with the Biden administration, but rather an issue with the Democratic establishment in general. They have this 1980s, 1990s mindset that being super pro-Zionism is popular with voters. But that's just not the political landscape anymore. Attitudes and demographics have changed in the last 30, 40 years. And not to mention we have so much more access to instantaneous information these days. Back then, all you really had was establishment media whose best interest was to parrot pro-Zionist talking points, because for decades, the US has been giving billions to Israel in military aid. The very same munitions that Israel is using to gun down and bomb Gazan civilians and children are the ones that this country has armed them with. But now we don't just have media that's filtered through a lens that reflects the best interests of both the Israeli and US government, but now we have instantaneous access to horrific photos and videos that display clear as day the atrocities that Israel is committing upon Gazans. We also have instant access to statistics such as this from Al Jazeera. The health ministry in Gaza had reported that the death toll had surpassed 30,000, including 12,300 children. Compare that to the 1,400 or so Israelis that died on October 7th. Does that sound proportionate to you? When the death toll is that disproportionate, and according to BBC, between 144,000 and 175,000 buildings across the whole Gaza Strip have been damaged or destroyed, that's between 50% and 61% of Gaza's buildings. Does it sound like this is simply a war to stop Hamas, or rather does this sound like indiscriminate slaughter of civilians and ensuring that the land they live on is uninhabitable? And this is what Joe Biden is aiding. This is what he is uncritically supporting. Joe Biden can call up Netanyahu tomorrow and say, cease what you're doing in Gaza, or else we'll cut off your funding, cut off munitions supplied to you, because a significant portion of Israel's military budget is from this country. They largely depend on the US to supply their weapons and fund their military. They have everything to lose if Joe Biden were to call for a ceasefire and Israel refuses. But I really do not have the confidence that Joe Biden and his administration will do this, even after the high turnout in Michigan to vote in protest of Joe Biden's actions. In an interview with NPR following the Michigan primary, Mitch Landrieu, co-chair of Biden's re-election campaign, had this to say in regards to young voters disapproving of Biden's actions. There are a lot of issues that affect young voters, not just this one. When you start talking about climate change, when you talk about the economy, when you talk about healthcare issues, when you talk about the right to control your own body, to marry who you want, all of these issues will come into play. And remember, the question in November will be Trump versus Biden. Of course, when everybody's already seen what Donald Trump has done, he is going to govern in chaos. Total fucking tone-deaf response. Just fall back on Trump is still worse, so therefore everyone will just gloss over us aiding and abetting a genocide. Trump would be just as bad, if not even worse, than Biden when it comes comes to Israel and Gaza, and he is absolutely a threat when it comes to issues such as civil rights, bodily autonomy, etc. But just simply pointing at the other guy and saying, well, he's even worse, is not going to energize people to vote for you, especially younger voters, the demographic of people who are easily the most disgusted in you happily supporting a genocide. I don't like putting that much stock in polls, especially when we're, 8 months out from the election. I like using the 2022 midterms as a prime example as to why I don't put much stock in polls. People were projecting a red wave, instead we got a red trickle. This was largely due to unexpectedly high turnout rates for young voters. This was the November after Roe v. Wade was overturned, so young voters were energized to vote in opposition of the Republican Party. There could possibly be an opposite effect this November, because unless a ceasefire is called before then, this issue is not just going to fade away. The same young voters who helped prevent a red wave in 2022 may be energized to just stay the fuck home this November because they can't in good conscience vote for Joe Biden. And if this demographic of voters continue to feel disenfranchised, Biden may be fucked in November. Like I said before, I don't put that much stock in polls, so it was Michigan's primary that made it crystal fucking clear that Biden may be in trouble. From NBC, Biden won Michigan in 2020 by approximately 150,000 votes. He won 83% of the vote in precincts with the highest concentration of Muslim and Arab Americans and 81% of votes in Hamtramck, a Muslim-majority city. Michigan is a key battleground state with a high Muslim and Arab population. The Biden administration better get their heads out of their asses and finally leave 1993 and enter 2024, or else this could cost them the election. And who knows the kind of damage another Trump term could cause. He already got 3 Supreme Court justices appointed in his first term. I don't even want to think of the possible ramifications of another Trump term, but that may very well be a reality soon. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.